My name is Danica, and today I have an original tag/discussion video. I've been thinking lately about books that betray you. Specifically, recently, Casey at Casey the Canadian Lesbian reviewed Boy Snow Bird by Helen Oyemi and talked about how she loved the first maybe 90% of the book until the end had this terrible transphobia in it. I've heard similar things about the sequel to Francesca Leo Bloch's book Love in the Time of Global Warming. I really liked that book, and so did Bisexual Books, the Tumblr, and then they reviewed the sequel, and it turns out that there's a lot of transphobia in the sequel, which was really disappointing after how great the first book was. So I'll be skipping both of those, but it got me thinking about the concept of book betrayal in general. It's a little different than just being disappointed with a book, because first you have to fall in love with the book, and then it has to betray you. So here are a few of the books that I felt betrayed by, and I hope that you will share your own answers as well. Number 1, a book you thought was a standalone until it left you dangling from a cliff edge at the end. I really liked the book Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood, but I thought it really worked as a standalone, and I was so irritated by the ending, which sets it up for a sequel, that I never read the sequels just on principle. Number 2, a book you loved until the ending pulled the rug from under you. And for me, that's Life of Pi by Jan Martel. I actually really enjoyed the beginning of this book, and then I got to the end, and I think it was the first time that I actually wanted to hurl a book across the room. I was so angry at the ending. And in hindsight, I don't think it's a deal breaker for me. I actually went out and got this illustrated edition after that, so I do want to reread it, and I want to return to it after I know the ending, but I definitely felt betrayed by it at the time. Next, a childhood favorite that's not nearly as good as you remembered it to be. My answer doesn't fit the question perfectly, but it's the Narnia series. When I first read this as a young kid, I really loved it just as a fun fantasy adventure series, and then later, when I was a bit older of a kid, I found out all the religious overtones and just felt horrified that I had been indoctrinated without knowing it, which was probably an overreaction, but it definitely just disgusted me at the time that someone could be feeding me those messages and I wasn't aware of it. Next is a favorite book that turned out to have an awful author, and I feel like this is going to be a popular answer to this one, really needs no other explanation. Orson Scott Card. Number 5, a character death that seemed unnecessarily cruel. Usually I understand character deaths in a story. I understand that stories have to have stakes. I understand when deaths drive a plot and are necessary to the plot. The one character death that I will never be over is from a TV show, so I won't discuss it. But the book death that I felt most betrayed by was in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, and it's probably not what you're thinking. I was waiting in line for the midnight release of Deathly Hallows just hours before reading it. I had decided that my favorite character of the series was Hedwig, and who's the first character killed just completely unnecessarily? Hedwig. And I still think it wasn't necessary to the plot, it was just cruel, there was no need for it. Still better. Next is a sequel that didn't live up to the predecessor, or a favorite author that writes a book that isn't as good as the last ones. For this one I have Are You My Mother by Alison Bechdel, and this isn't a bad book, it's just that I loved Fun Home so deeply that I was expecting that kind of experience with Are You My Mother, and when it didn't deliver that, I was just kind of heartbroken about it. Number 7 is a book whose hype you bought into and it didn't deliver. There are a few books that I've read because of the booktube hype, and I should really stop doing this because I know that I'll probably be disappointed, and although I knew going into it that I probably wasn't going to love it to the extent the booktube was, I was still kind of puzzled by Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. I just found it forgettable. I wasn't really sure why people are so passionate about this book. It was one of those times where I felt like, am I reading the same book? But it really shouldn't be a surprise for me because straight romance isn't really my specialty, but the book that really confused me, genuinely confused me, how it got so much love and hype was The Magicians by Lev Grossman. I was reading that book just desperately trying to figure out what it was that people loved about it because I loathed it. That book, between the annoying character and the meandering plot that didn't go anywhere, I hated it from beginning to end, pretty much, and I couldn't find out what it was that people loved about it, which was disappointing because I swear I was looking. Number 8, a book that offended you unexpectedly. And I say unexpectedly because sometimes you go into a book knowing, like, I'm not sure if I'm going to agree with this book, and that's not really a betrayal. I've ranted before about the transphobic cartoon that was in the end of Wintertown by Stephen Emmond. The author did apologize for it on Twitter, but it still just completely blindsided me. Totally unnecessary, just horribly offensive, out of nowhere. And number 9 is just for any other books that you felt betrayed by that didn't really fit the questions. I've included everything that I can think of. And number 10 is who are you going to tag? And I'm going to tag a bunch of people. So I tag Jessie of Cup of Books, Nancy of Nancy's Reads, Kira of Fangirl Flails, Susie of Read Susie Read, Candace of Librarian Fan Mail, Stephanie of Stephanie Spines and Tim, Elizabeth of Books and Pieces, Ronnie of Ron Lit, and Monica of Sophisticated Blueberry. And of course, anyone who feels like it, I would love to have you do this tag, even if you just want to respond in the comments with some of the books that you felt betrayed by. Let's just share this experience. And thank you for watching. Bye!